Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome to Workflow Wednesday. And this is a bit of a crowd in here for today. We have Kelly, we've got Sir Wade Neidstadt, and my boss. Where is it? Over there, Eric Brown, our marketing director.
Put me on the spot
So
like
welcome
that.
everyone. Hope everybody's having a good day. And yeah, so let's just we'll just get started, I guess. Go so. Sir, I'm used to saying like Mister, but I suppose Sir is the appropriate title this time. So go ahead and introduce yourself, what it is you do, who you are, what you do, just in case anybody doesn't already know, and then we'll go from there.
Hello.
Excuse me. Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm Sir Wade. And yeah, Sir is my legal first name, in case anyone's ever
Oh,
wondering.
okay.
Yeah, everyone thinks it's like a YouTube thing that I'm like, yeah, Sir Wade. Like, no, my parents are just funny. So
That's cool. So like I thought for
Love it.
sure you were knighted, like
that's the
actually.
goal. If we
That's
can
what I
become
was
Sir
expecting.
Sir, that's,
Sir.
I actually Googled it. Like, is it possible? I think the best I can do as a U.S. citizen is a Duke Sir. But,
Oh, okay.
um, oh,
Hello. Sorry. I didn't think the camera would be so low, so now it's just weird.
that's my wife, Jess.
I apologize. Hello.
She's come to get a camera battery.
Yeah, both of the camera batteries I had were dead. I'm trying to film a video. So sorry to interrupt.
I
will
just
cut
thought
it
like
if
I thought we were in the ring or something.
awkward.
Yeah. That's why I
I'm
like
so
live
embarrassed.
content so much.
Oh, it's always fun here.
It's always a great time.
There's also a cat off screen. Anyways, hi, I'm Sir Wade, and I do character animation. So I'm a 3D character animator and visual effects artist. This is my wife, Jess.
Oh, hello.
She's also a YouTuber, so we both do YouTube about different things. And my whole thing online is to create educational content that's hopefully entertaining and inspiring in some ways to help aspiring artists achieve what it is they want to do. Mostly geared towards the animation industry, but it's a big industry, so do whatever.
Cool. Right on. That's great. I was actually just watching. You're looking at a character rig for the Miles Morales. Um, I'd only just got into the little bit of it before I had to start putting all this stuff together, but it was really cool looking because I absolutely love that movie. That's probably one of the best Spider-Man movies that's ever been made.
Oh yeah, so good.
So that's pretty cool. So actually, I'm gonna kind of take a little bit of a step back because I feel like Kelly here is probably the closest to what you do here at Puget Systems, and so I feel like maybe he might have some of the better questions to ask, and then I'll just kind of handle chat and fill in where we can. So Kelly, do you have anything you want to start off with? Just to put you on the spot like that?
Yeah. Well, actually, I feel like a better place to start might be to kind of talk about a little bit about like how you made that journey that you have.
Oh, sure.
Because you've talked about that you worked at DreamWorks there, and then now you're doing this tutorial content. Like, how did you get from A to B there?
That's a good point.
That's a good. Yeah, good. Thank you.
Yeah, so I actually started off as a computer science major in college. That's what I've always been techie, but I didn't know animation was a job you could do. But I'd always been doing video projects over the years. I grew up in an area, Apple Valley, California, middle of nowhere, desert between Las Vegas and Los Angeles. So there was really no, I didn't know about any of that stuff. So I went to school for computer science and then discovered that you can do creative stuff and make movies and all that good stuff. So I took an online animation school. I went to Animation Mentor, learned how to animate, and then I had done a bunch of other my family's all teachers, so that helped me to get a training job at DreamWorks. When I finished Animation Mentor, I had the animation side and the training side from just being around teachers my whole life, and I worked at DreamWorks for 2 years as a trainer, teaching 50 something classes, all the different software. I was the main
Wow.
Maya guy, all the Adobe software, bunch of other proprietary tools that aren't useful to me anymore, but ton of cool stuff. Learned a million things, and I've never said that phrase before. Learned a million things, but learned a lot. And then when I was starting animation, and I was just kind of learning how to do it, and before I went to Animation Mentor, I remember I was looking up like YouTube stuff, and I was looking up videos, and at the time there was absolutely nothing. And I don't mean like there wasn't much good stuff. Like there was literally nothing out there resource wise for animators to like learn on their own. It was all interviews of like these Disney, like these old people who worked and like I got hired to Disney like back million like it was just like I called them because I had seen a computer before and they gave me a job. And I was like, that's not helpful. That does not help us anymore. So at the time I thought, well, someone should probably get on that. And then I'm like, well, maybe I should just do it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that came to be. Once I was at DreamWorks, I'm like, I really should have been making videos this whole time. I should probably start that now.
Cool.
That's kind of the gist. When I left DreamWorks, it was because I saw that opportunity. Is like, I should pursue this. This sounds like a fun, like, purpose thing to do. And also just figured, like, before I get the animation job at DreamWorks, may as well, go explore other possibilities. And there's so much cool stuff coming out now. I didn't want to be just super focused on, like, I'm just going to work in a studio. Like, I do want to do that, but there's more that I wanted to explore. So
Yeah. What have been some of kind of the biggest hurdles, I guess, that you've faced since like creating this tutorial content?
part of it was, I guess, from a tutorial standpoint, is like making it interesting. I feel like tutorials are so often like, welcome to this software. Today we're gonna do, and it's like faceless. You never see the person. Like, you just hear this like voice, just the voice of God.
Click that button.
And it's not very interesting. So trying to reinvent tutorials to make them a little bit more engaging was one of the big challenges. But aside from that, trying to come up with creative videos that, like, people who are just starting out versus people who have been in the industry for a while, and trying to make content that kind of appeals to anybody, that's always been tricky.
That's pretty cool. Hold on. I'm gonna have to be a little quiet. It looks like our YouTube side of things is broken, so I'm gonna try and fix that. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to let you guys handle things for just a moment while I figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, Kelly, for the people that aren't familiar, I mean, it might make sense to also talk a little bit about your background.
Sure. Scared my dog. So I'm Kelly. I'm the I guess 3D content creation, game development labs technician at Puget. So I'll be creating benchmarks for currently working on 3ds Max and Maya, and then I'll be doing some Unreal and all those, pretty much anything used in that space I'll eventually get to. Background is worked in the game industry for several years, did quality assurance for several years, did environment art for a while, and then kind of looked for a way to work in the field, but not in the field, if that makes any sense. I got tired of the contract work and the ups and downs of the game industry, so that's why I ended up here.
And how did you, like, what was your experience in kind of learning and getting into that space? Like, did you go through formal training? Like did you go through formal training, or did you kind of go through like a similar process of Sir Wade here, where like you're kind of figuring all this stuff out kind of on your own?
I started with a formal training. It was a school up in Everett, Washington that they mainly focused on the film industry. And so at the time, this was a long time ago. So at the time they used Soft Image XSI, which is now extinct. It doesn't exist anymore. Also purchased by Autodesk, but then they decided that they didn't need Maya, Max, and XSI all doing the exact same thing. So they just have Max and Maya doing the exact same thing now. So I had a formal training there. That focused more on traditional skills. So I did, like, my first animation class was all 2D animation, like hand-drawn 2D animation. Did that for a while. And then we eventually started doing computers like the third year of college. This was a full 4-year program. But then by the time we graduated, everyone kind of realized that it wasn't a great education. It really kind of it didn't teach you very well to what the current standard was. And to kind of prove that point, the school closed a quarter after I graduated, like just shut down, went bankrupt, lost everything.
Wow.
So that tells you that it wasn't a great education. So
If
after
it's okay,
that,
it's your fault, Kelly.
yeah, it was all me. After that, then I started doing more informal training, like learning online and kind of figuring things out. Did another round of semi-formal training. There was a guy up here that worked for ArenaNet, and he started his own school because he was teaching out of a community college, and was like, all these education programs for game art are just terrible. So he started a school that's just like, okay, it's 6 months and we're just going to teach you like the actual skills you need, and then you kind of go from there. And so I did that as my second round of education, and that helped me, and that's where I got actual work experience from, or got an actual job after that.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. So like to put context around like some of the work that that Kelly's doing right now, like he's currently putting benchmarks together for both 3ds Max and Maya. And so Wade, I'm super interested in your thoughts of like what are some of the biggest pain points that people are experiencing right now? Maybe you said you have more experience on the Maya side. So maybe like what are the biggest pain points people are experiencing in Maya right now that we might be able to like kind of cater our benchmark to kind of expose like what it is that that people could be doing to get more out of their hardware for like this specific use case.
Well, it'd be cool. So I guess it depends on like modeling versus animation versus blah blah
Mhm.
blah. But like, especially for the animators, I feel like some of the biggest issues are, I think the everyday one that everyone deals with is like viewport stuff.
Mhm.
First of all, people don't usually know like what settings to play with. People are always worried they're going to break Maya, in my experience, of like which things can you mess with and what can be reset to default if you break it. But aside from that, just character manipulation, deformation, moving, you taking controls and adjusting, and then having that thing where like you take a thing and you move it and you wait and you wait and it goes and then it moves and you're like, oh, too far, and then you, that process is the worst. So knowing what hardware to upgrade to not have that is probably the most important thing. And then beyond that, I think just a smooth playback. You know, if you're manipulating stuff in real time while you're working versus then trying to preview your animation at 24 FPS and then, or 30 if you're doing games, and making sure that it looks the way you expect, and not having to sit there and play blast and wait and play blast, get that video file, and depending on your codec, then having to go encode it, like, ugh, bleh.
Yeah. Do you find that is more impacted by like the poly count in the scene, or effects in the scene, or what do you think is
Usually the
causing the
rigs.
slowdowns? The rigs.
Because even like beginner students who only have like a pretty rudimentary rig in their shot and they don't have a scene, they don't have like, they're set to proxy, you know, they still have low poly counts, but like blend shapes and heavier rig files where there's just more data inside the rig it's trying to calculate on that end. I don't fully know exactly like what it is in the rig that's doing that, except I know blend shapes is a piece of it. That
Right.
usually seems to make a pretty big impact.
Okay. Yeah, the straight animation side is a little outside of my comfort zone. It's gonna be a lot of learning there because, like I said, I was an environment artist, so did a lot of heavy modeling, high poly stuff, all that kind of stuff. But actually trying to move a character, man, in school that was, I don't know how animators do it. It's
Lots of
like a whole new
patience.
skill set.
The high poly stuff's crazy. Whenever I see like environments or like anything,
Yeah.
someone's like, I'm sculpting in ZBrush. I'm just like, I'm
Yeah.
glad you're doing it because that scares me. It
Right.
looks amazing, but I don't have that skill set.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that I found interesting in the Unreal 5 demo that I kind of wanted to get a animator's perspective on. They talked about importing a 33 million triangle statue, basically, but it could have been a character, and just using that directly in the engine. But that's not something you would ever want to animate, correct? Like,
Never.
yeah. So, I mean, how do you see that working? What do you see workflow being there?
Well, hopefully, hopefully people are kind to everyone else in their pipeline
Yeah.
when they make these choices. But I feel like the pro and the con of when that sentence came out for me was, the good side was like, ooh, like we can have all the fidelity and all the like, we can have cinematic quality animation in like those moments where the camera gets up close and she's kind of shimmying through the crawl space or whatever. Like that's not
Mhm.
a cutscene, but we can have some like really interesting animation choices where we probably couldn't before because of that new whatever it is they're giving us. But yeah, it's hopefully they have people on the team who really understand that artist perspective of cool, make that model, rig it in a way that's not going to make my computer explode.
Right.
I have heard really interesting, like not horror stories, but really interesting stories about like. But yeah, it's I guess hopefully different studios when they're working on certain characters, like the Transformers characters. There's this great story that Sean Kelly told us. He's an animator at ILM, and he shared this thing of how one of the Transformers, I forget the name of them, the Destroyer or something. It's the one that like connects to a bunch of other parts of like other Transformers and then starts like inhaling the pyramids or whatever. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
That giant Transformer was so ridiculous. Someone wrote a script to help like rig it properly, and that script and that rig melted the motherboard of the computer they were working on.
No way.
Like actually fried it, smoke, everything. So that was like a thing, like the Transformer, he destroyed it.
Yeah. Came to life.
So let's not do that.
No.
Are we back up, Houston?
Yeah, well, we're good on YouTube, except now I'm being told that I didn't update the titles on any of the other channels, and so now, congratulations, everybody thinks we're at the Labs Open Office Hour instead of Workflow Wednesday.
Well,
Just
that's all
one
you,
more-
Kelly. It's just on you.
Just,
All right.
just one more thing for me to stress out about. But no, everybody, all the channels are live now. Everybody on YouTube and Twitch and everywhere else we're good. But now I'm updating titles. So, but man, it is crazy to hear that like some of the stuff we hear from like say Corridor, where they'll get an upgrade to hardware and it kind of opens up new opportunities for them. But to kind of hear that there are people out there who are pushing their limited hardware to such a point that it actually like explodes. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that trickles downstream to the question of, okay, yes, you can, but should you?
Right?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's still pretty remarkable though, to hear that people are trying to push. You hear the cliche of like, oh, people pushing the envelope and like, bleeding edge, this and that. But like to actually hear people literally pushing it to the extreme to the point of failure is pretty cool in my mind. I think that's awesome. Getting every little bit of performance you possibly can until it breaks. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sure at the time they weren't exactly saying, "Oh, this is cool," but
The artists were. I think the studio executive or whoever makes the purchasing decisions probably not happy, but the artists were like, "Whoa, we did it! Look at that!"
Yeah. Yeah. I've probably been bragging about that for years to come.
Oh yeah.
hey, we're talking about it. So.
Yeah.
Boop, boop.
So, then I guess, sir, what was your experience? So, a lot of people you did this intentionally, moving from a studio to working from home, and now a lot of people are unintentionally having that same experience. What were the hardware changes that you felt were the biggest things? For you're at a studio, you probably have access to crazy hardware, and now you're at home trying to make the same quality but with whatever you have. What kind of things would you recommend people look at, or
Sure.
what's the experience there?
Well, get a monitor that's bright enough that you can get a tan by turning it up. Get some sun. No, yeah, it depends. I guess so the different facets of what I'm doing, there's like the animation side where I'm creating animation, there's visual effects, which is a slightly different workflow, and then there's the content creation side of what I do. And all of those require slightly different components that luckily my PC will do all of beautifully. But in general, I think, if you're working in 3D software, having a good processor it's not the easiest thing to swap out. If you're like, I'm just going to switch processors, that's not usually something you can just do. But having a good processor is very important, just because the amount of complexity of what you're doing, like that's probably one of the biggest things of the last computer I was using before this one. I didn't know much about processors and like what was right and what was wrong. And so I think I had a Xeon processor, and I was like, I'll just go for this one. It's more expensive and that looks like it'll do better. And I read something on some article like, yeah, 3D. I didn't realize it was like for rendering. So I didn't realize that there was a difference in terms of like actively working on something versus rendering the final thing. And anyway, that was the whole thing. But things that are a little bit more actionable are good amount of RAM is super helpful. That was something that I know at DreamWorks. My computer had like 128 gigs of RAM, and I used all of it. I have that habit of opening a million tabs and 30 different programs and just keeping them all there because I don't know what I'm going to need,
Right.
which I couldn't normally do at home. So a RAM upgrade is helpful just to not go crazy with that. But I think that also the GPU, NVIDIA, like I've got NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2080 Ti currently in this computer.
Nice.
It's magical, and it's
Yeah.
everything from like basic stuff like there's the NVIDIA RTX voice plugin, which is like a free beta testing thing that they've got out right now, which is like if you're having Zoom calls and you're having all these meetings and you have car noises or you hear all the drumming and sounds from your microphone, you can just click this button if you have an RTX GPU and it just uses AI to filter all that out and it just hears your voice. It's incredible. That's like a regular everyday person useful thing that the tech enables,
Yeah.
which then goes all the way up to, much higher quality visuals in your program that you can actually push it further with the frame rates and so on.
Yeah.
So I'm super interested because like for a lot of people right now, I mean, especially like being a workstation manufacturer, like of course we want to talk about technology and the hardware and all that. But for a lot of people like right now, that's not something that's actually feasible. Like making hardware upgrades right now while you can maybe barely make rent, like isn't the most feasible thing. So like what like tips and tricks do you have outside of like upgrade your hardware or something do you have for maybe more toward like the workflow side of things for people that are still trying to make ends meet, I guess, from like a content creation standpoint right now?
Sure. I guess I wish I knew like who in the chat, like what are people up to? What are people doing? I'm not like, oh, for Maya. And everyone's like, I don't use Maya. But I think something like for everybody, I mean, this one's going to sound dumb, but like the time management side of it is super important. Like as a general work from home thing that I had to learn really early on, because I've been working from home for maybe 3 or 4 years now. And so I'm pretty used to it. One of the pain points that we recognized early on, because my wife and I both work from home, is being able to step out like of your workflow, like to have when you're in work mode, you're in work mode, and have that space that you're working in, not in your bedroom or not by your couch or your TV. Like having, even if you don't have a large apartment and you don't have like a separate room to use or a house or something, get like $150 divider if you can, and just like create an office space for yourself so that you can leave that space, like decompress, get out of work mode, and then come back in fresh. Because back when we were in a 1-bedroom apartment for a while where I had like a living room office, she had like a bedroom office, and it was awful because we couldn't turn it off. And I think that's something a lot of people are experiencing is, they're answering emails till 9 p.m. and they're constantly plugged in. You need to have some kind of a physical separation to be able to not go crazy.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's kind of just fascinated me, is that like no matter what industry you're in, it seems like everyone's kind of experiencing, we still have some shared experience here, and that everyone's kind of experiencing those issues of working from home. Like you run into the same problems no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
Then another thing that's maybe a little helpful too is when for me, something with my workflow is when I'm working on one project. I don't know if everyone else. I don't know if everyone else deals with this, but I'm really bad at personally, I'm terrible at multitasking. I have to set time blocks for myself and only allow myself to look at certain, like I put my phone like away, because if it comes up and there's like, oh, I need to deal with that, I won't finish the first thing. And that's true with my computer too. Like if I'm on my laptop or whatever, I have to have like different desktops for different like mindsets. Like, okay, I'm gonna put my 3D stuff over here, but I'm not putting email on this area, or maybe on this, or maybe just on my Chrome profile. Like I'm gonna have a Chrome profile where I'm logged into YouTube and Twitch and Facebook and all my things, and you can make a Chrome profile that's like work mode, and you don't log in that profile, so that you can just kind of switch quickly back and forth.
Ooh.
But then when you go to another, like I'm gonna go to YouTube, oh, I'm not logged in, what are all these weird videos? I don't want to watch Fortnite stuff. You're less tempted to find your regular routine because you're not logged into your like personal stuff. So it's that same kind of separation, but from a work perspective, it can help you not feel like you're at home. You can kind of go to the office, go into that other mode.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you only have the one machine where you're trying to do both, where you work and play on the same thing. That's really clever. I didn't know about that, the Chrome profile thing. That's good to know. Because like
Yeah,
I have actual separate logins on the laptop that I use for work. Like I do have a personal login for some of the stuff that I have to do. You know, I don't want to have to go off to my PC, but that's nice to know that you can kind of change it without having to go through all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially
I'd
if
be
you
considering
don't
building go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. After you.
I was just considering building a second computer for that very reason, because like I sat down and like, oh, I see Steam just updated something or whatever, and
Right?
I really need to get some programming done, but gotta check this update.
Yeah, it's hard when because like I thought about that too once, like, oh, maybe I should make a different login on my computers. When it boots up, it goes to, but I never remember like how do you install software to work on both, or maybe I don't want it to work on the other one, and so you still have all the same temptations of like, well, all I have to do is click that button and it still launches the program.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess works if it's not a Chrome thing. That's actually still maybe do both.
Right on. I'm curious. So you do a lot of educational videos. And I admit that I haven't gotten too deep into the full breadth of topic content. But I suppose for some people who might be just interested, where would they start if they're going to consume your content, but then also in like kind of a bigger, broader sense, since you do have some experience with, you know, working for the man, you know, the company, the corporate stuff. Which do you recommend? Do you like what you do now? How would you go about that if you were starting out now, I guess? That kind of rambled in a weird way.
No, I guess so. The first part of the question with like where to start if you were trying to look into this kind of thing, I think YouTube in general, my YouTube channel, because I'm on a bunch of platforms, YouTube and Twitch and things. From like a general exploration standpoint, I think YouTube is probably the best place to go because you can kind of look and cherry pick like, oh, like, do I want advice from like industry interviews? Do I want to watch tutorials straight out the gate? Do I want like more advice centered content of like, oh, like that's an interesting story or experience that might just be useful day to day? That is a little bit easier to kind of find a path, I guess. But then I do a lot of live stuff too, live 3 days. I'm basically on Twitch 3 days a week for 4-ish hours minimum each time. And so if you aren't sure where to start, that's a good place to go. And we just chat and hang out, and you know, sometimes we'll play games, but a lot of times it's like, okay, I'm gonna work for 4 hours. Come watch the workflow. It's literally me doing my workflow for hours on end. So that can be a good way to kind of figure out like, I'm having an issue with this, and you can kind of get support. But to your other question on like, I guess if someone were trying to get into this, I do like doing the independent stuff. I did like the studio too. You know, it's definitely not for everybody to go full-time content creation because not everybody enjoys making, like you have to do it all. You have to come up with the idea and then record it and then edit it and then do the business side of like, then like SEO and tags and do the thumbnail. And I hate the thumbnail. Like there's so many pieces
Right.
to it and you don't always enjoy them all. Where at a job, you know, you get hired in a role with certain responsibilities that hopefully align with what you want, and then you know, you can grow and move from there. But it's definitely something that I would recommend people try. Like if you're doing something now, give it a shot, see if there's something you want to share, something you want to make, and then try doing it for a while. And it might also just lead to other cool opportunities for the full-time job stuff. Like I've had a lot of job offers of people who are like, we see your videos, we need that too. Like, would you make videos for us? I'm like, in most cases, I'm like, well, I have to have time to do mine, so no, but thank you.
That's interesting way of putting it. I hadn't thought of it that way. Where like almost like, yeah, I suppose just creating your own stuff could lead to opportunities in that way.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
I didn't do a ton of freelance work when I left the studio, but that was one of my goals. Was like, I want to try freelance, and I never really found a great way to like, oh, this is where you go to get clients. That was always tricky, but I got some from word of mouth friends who work freelance, and they would, you know, that was probably my main thing. But all the other interesting ones mostly came because I was making YouTube content, because I was building legacy and showing people how to do cool stuff so that they could go make things. And people, how'd you learn that? Oh, this guy. And so I kind of had this referral platform to people coming back and going, oh, he knows what he's talking about. Are you open for commissions or for whatever? So it's actually a good way to get freelance clients is to make content.
So I'm super interested in your perspective because we've kind of talked about this a little bit internally, and we've had a couple other conversations about this. That like right now, in a time when we can't like go out to film sets and like we can't bring people together, a lot of people have been kind of speculating as to whether or not a lot of like mainstream content is going to go toward things like animation. Just because of the fact that you don't need to bring all the same people together that you normally would for like a traditional film. Are you seeing that, or do you have any thoughts on that?
I think I'm seeing that in the way that like a lot of people are trying animation for the first time that they wouldn't have before. I think a lot of content creators are just in general. I think the studios are also aware, like Netflix and things like. Animation was already something that everybody liked and everybody wanted to watch, and there already wasn't enough being made to keep up with the demand before this whole thing happened. Now that that's the only option for most people to create, I think we're seeing, the demand was already there, and now the desire to meet the demand is finally starting to match it, or not match it, but it's coming up as well. So I do think it's gonna create a lot of opportunities for people, to learn stuff, to try stuff, and to find new opportunities by doing it if they want to. I think, did that answer your question? I kind of forgot what your question was.
Yeah, I think so. But it was mostly just whether or not like you think that we're actually going to see more animation style content popping
yes.
out.
Then yes.
One of the examples that we had brought up like the last time one of the last times we had one of these was like they started doing those like Disney started doing those little like Olaf videos at home, so like it was just like a handful of people that were creating those. But then next thing you know, you started seeing, after they got like 12 of those in, like all of a sudden there's like this huge list of people that are involved in them. So they're definitely throwing more resources at it. But I'm also curious, like if you have any idea of like what does that like as an animator, like what does that workflow even look like to get that many different people like involved remotely on something because the quality of the content actually doesn't look like it was compromised very much. So I'm kind of curious if you have any thoughts as well on like how does that workflow even work with all these people remotely?
With so much planning.
Okay.
I mean, something that not a lot of people know about the animation industry is that you have like production and you have overhead at a studio, where you have like overhead is, your HR and finance and, recruiting and things like that keep the business running. And then you have the production side, which is what makes the stuff. But even within that, there's still a separation where there's the artists making the stuff, which everyone knows about. And then there's the production team, coordinators, PAs, producers, like that category of worker. They are like, and I'm still a little fuzzy on like entirely all they do, so I hope I don't do a disservice, but they support that production by making sure like, oh, this person's gonna be sick, this person's not here today, blah, blah, blah. We need to rearrange schedules, timelines. This is how much needs to get done by this day, this week. This is when our deadlines are, this is when we're showing. They have all that information and like manage it all in these moving pieces. And they're like the invisible unsung heroes behind the production. So when it comes to like working from home, I imagine they're the ones probably just like, cool, what can you get done like with your computer? Like, what can you, okay, like you don't have a laptop, let's get you sent a laptop. Like whatever it is they need to do to figure out like, you have kids. You may not be able to focus for quite as many hours on end as this person who's, single and 24. So let's take some of your workflow and give you the ones that you can do, and then let's do this. And I imagine there's a lot of that. Wow. And then overall, just like the pipeline part of it, just making sure that like software compatibility and file sharing. I know there's some platforms like Artella. It's that's what I know of. It's this really cool, like it handles all the file stuff. So there's revisions and you check in and check out files from this cloud database where, like, oh, I need this rig. And so you kind of check out the rig and you instance it in, and then you can work with it. And then it's all still living in the studio bubble. And I don't know if they use that, but that's, that concept of cloud.
I have to imagine they at least do something similar. Yeah.
Yeah. That's paramount. One person's computer crashes and they had all the files of Toy Story 2.
Wow.
That happened at Toy Story 2.
Yeah,
they
I heard
deleted the
about
whole movie.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but there was some older backup that they found, right? It was they didn't have to like redo
Sort
the
of.
whole thing. Yeah.
It was crazy. They run on Linux, and so they didn't have permission set up properly back then, and so Toy Story 2 was on this drive, and someone did RM star, which is remove all, and it wasn't intentional, but someone accidentally deleted everything, and so they're just watching everything just disappear, and they're like, oh, well, we have backups. Backups had failed for the last several weeks. They had nothing, and they were just panicking because the movie is due in like 2 months, and that would have taken like a year plus to recreate. But I think the TD on the film, she was a new mom, and she had arranged something where she had basically copied the movie to her home office so she could work from home and to be with the new baby. And so she had a copy. So they went and got it. They brought it back, and it all like they were able to copy it back over. But it was the work from home that saved the day for Toy
Wow.
Story 2, or we wouldn't have had a movie.
That's nuts. And it's just every time I talk with people, I realize that the work is way more complicated than you think, than the average consumer thinks. It looks, the finished product, and every I'm sure this applies to a lot of different industries, but like the finished product, you're always like, oh, I could probably do that, and then getting more and more insight behind the curtain and stuff. It's just like, no, it takes so much time, so much, and in a lot of cases, it's so many people to make it. Like you were saying, there's probably half a dozen people just to organize the project timeline, like who's going to do what and when and how much can they handle, and then like there's probably a whole person's job just equipment, like who has what and what can they do with that.
Yeah.
And like it's mind-boggling. Wow. And then to the other side of that too is to see like what one person is capable of a lot of times, and how much more they're able to do as things have progressed. Like, it's so cool. It's always a bit of awe-inspiring to me.
I've always found it amazing that all these software vendors keep coming with better tools that make things faster and you can do more and stuff. But at the same time, the size of studios keeps growing and growing. Like they keep putting more people, even though each person can do more things. And then they have satellite studios that are also contributing things. And they just keep finding new ways to use whatever resources you do have.
I read this interesting thing, or heard it a few years back, that Toy Story 1, the first ever CG movie, whatever the number was like, oh, it took this long to render this one frame. And it was a really long time. Like it took them forever to render a frame because they didn't really have the technology for it back then. It was brand new. And if you compare that to Toy Story 3, like how long did it take them to render one whole frame? Was the same amount of time. Which is weird because it's like, wait, things were way faster, but they put so much more in there that they still pushed it to the point that it was taking forever.
Yeah.
I think it's exactly what you're talking about. Like,
Yeah.
we'll push.
I remember when I was at a game studio, and this was just before the Xbox One came out, that one of the technical artists said like something along the lines of, I'm not sure why they need to increase how many polygons you have, because you can just do it with a normal map or something like that. And it's like, no, if you give me more polygons, I will find a way to use more polygons. Like, and just like you give an artist tools, if you give them better tools, they'll just find new ways to use those tools. Like, it's just the way it is.
If you give a mouse a cookie,
Right.
Yeah.
they'll break it. You need to make a new cookie.
Let's see. So we did have a few questions from the chat. If you're if you're willing, if you might provide a bit of insight. Let's see. Some of it, I think, some of it's been kind of covered. It's a little bit more hardware related. Oh, here's a good one. What type of systems do those animators work on at the bigger studios, in your experience, I suppose? And then they were commenting it's weird to hear that they melted some motherboards.
I was actually shocked at like when I got to the studio, I think, oh, everything's gonna be amazing and perfect and nothing ever goes wrong. I'm like, oh, that's not true at all. That's just, that's life. That's creative software. Like things crash and you should do the best you can. The hardware that I remember having, let's see, they worked on Linux. Pixar and DreamWorks both work on Linux. I've only worked at DreamWorks, but I just happen to know. Both work on Linux. I'm not sure about Disney, but I know that they have a ton of RAM. because they
Right.
load in so much stuff. So I'm probably like 128 gigs of RAM, 64 minimum, but 128 I think is standard. The processors, I don't remember exactly what processors, but I know graphics card, at least at DreamWorks when I was there, they had the NVIDIA Quattro K6000, really
Okay.
top one. They had that in all the animators' computers. It's weird at the studio that it's hard to remember exactly the specs because we had a really weird way of classifying machines. They had
Okay.
categories, like the name of my computer. Like if I had to call tech support, be like, oh hey, like I need this software installed on my computer. I couldn't install software myself because security. So you call the team that handles the tech for the studio, and say, oh I need this. Great, what's your computer name? And they could like remote in and push stuff to it, and I'd be like, oh it's X gray color or lime book or something. It was always a first half and a last half, and the first half was like gray or X gray or red or X red or lime or X lime. It was like a color sort of thing, and that classified the power level of the computer. So like animators always had whatever the most powerful one, effects artists, like you could always say, oh yeah, like animators are supposed to have X limes now, and that meant like, oh that means you get this list of specs because they were all standardized.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then the second half was just the identifier, like, oh, I'm on X line book, X line statue, whatever it was, random. But yeah, they had it kind of broken out so that you knew, like, oh, that's an X line. Oh, that means that's gonna handle this. And so they had this organization system that I thought was really interesting. That's why I'm having a hard time remembering, like, what was what? Because I had an X line after a while. It was X ray, the next line. And...
I'm curious, was that purely defined off of like hardware specs, or was there any kind of like validation done internally to say like, okay, well we know that this type of hardware is the best for this specific use case, so we need to make sure that they have that, or was it purely like, well this has this number of cores or something, so we're going to classify it this way, you know?
I think it was really just hardware. They didn't. I don't. To my knowledge, they didn't have like a testing process. Like I know Puget has. You guys do a lot of tests and figure out like this is the best one for this. I don't
Yeah.
think they did anything like that. They didn't have like testing labs where they were running GPUs versus other options. I know that DreamWorks was part. I mean, I don't know if this is still true with their Universal buyout a few years back, but I know they were partnered with HP. So HP would always supply them with like new stuff. Which is why my first computer that I bought for myself was like, oh, I'm just going to buy an HP based on, and I picked the wrong stuff because I didn't know because they didn't have any of that information. So, but to my knowledge, no, I think they just went with whatever the manufacturer was like. This one, okay. Not although I should say that the VR, the mixed reality VR AR team, they have a motion capture stage below the artist building of DreamWorks, like underground. It's really cool. They would do a lot of testing. That team was really on it. They were pushing stuff. They were the ones who were like, oh yeah, we just got these crazy NVIDIA cards, and we just got this. Like they were building their computers and doing all the custom stuff where they were saying, this isn't working great for VR and motion capture. Let's do this instead. They were the main ones, I think, exploring, which has made sense because they were exploring the newest technologies.
Sure. That's cool. Right on. We do have another question from the chat, a little more industry, I suppose, related. Is how long did it take you to get your first job in the industry once you graduated?
I was very fortunate. This is not normal, what I'm about to tell you. So heads up. So I went to school for computer science, and I dropped out of regular school to do animation school. So I figured out very early on what I wanted to do, and I was very sure of it. And so I made a huge shift and took an 18-month program at Animation Mentor. And because of my other job history, like I had started my own business as a Microsoft Office like trainer, instructor for Chambers of Commerce. Like I had all these things that lined up really perfectly, so that when I finished Animation Mentor, it was the day that I finished school, I got hired at DreamWorks as a trainer. So it was literally the same day, but that's not like a normal thing.
Sure.
It varies for most people, but for me, and that's to say also, I got hired as a trainer, not as an animator. And my goal was animator. So I got into the industry, got my foot in the door, and I learned a lot, met a lot of people, and that helped a ton. And then I kind of shifted gears and went content. So in that sense, if you're like an animation job, I still haven't had one at a studio. But I know people who have, they finish school and then 6 months later they get a job. And I know most people, especially when you go to a school that's not really like optimized for animation, if you just go to a regular college that has an animation degree, they're often not really mapped to the industry very well, and as Kelly was mentioning. Those people, sometimes they take extra classes or things and hope to get in a year or two. And I know a guy who's been doing it for 10 years. you know, and
Wow.
it's just perseverance, and it varies based on, you know, opportunity and how much you put into it and a bunch of other things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a
Do you
bit of
have
a.
any do you have any like advice around that? Like what's the best thing you can do for yourself if you're trying to get into the industry?
Give yourself every opportunity. Like, don't close any doors on yourself if you can help it. Like, keep your options open as far as like, if it's like I'm trying to think of a good example, but I guess you know, network, use social media to your advantage. If you can make stuff, put it out. Don't hold on to it and go, oh, it's not ready to share. No, put it out. You'll get feedback, you'll get notes, and you'll learn faster. And people will see your progression and see that you're capable of doing more than you're doing now. Recruiters and people who help make those hiring decisions, they are like, their job is to see the potential in people, even if you're not quite there yet. So they can look at a demo reel and, you know, they can see your work and go, ooh, we can see like where you're lacking and where your strengths are. And then maybe you're not ready to be hired yet, but they'll keep that in mind. And if you make a connection and you network and you give yourself that opportunity, and be memorable to the point that next time you apply, it's not just talk when it's like, we'll keep your application around and we'll look at you. Like, that's not just talk. They actually do hang on to that and go, hey, didn't that person apply before? I recognize that name. You'd be shocked at how well these recruiters remember people. I can't even comprehend it sometimes, but they will look at a year later and go, this person applied before. Oh, wow. In 1 year, this is wow, that's a big change. They're may not ready just yet, but you know, if we hire them and help them grow, their learning potential is clearly like, they could probably do it. Let's give them a chance. Let's give them a shot. Let's hire them. Let's bring them in as an intern. That process
That's
happens
cool.
all the time. And so if you don't put your work out there, you're like, it's not ready. You don't get that contrast.
I've heard that. I've heard that a lot from content creators. Is like, even if you think it's bad, like you should still put it out there because you're almost saying no for the audience already,
Exactly.
or like you're kind of selling yourself short. You're not like you, you hear it's like the cliche. It's like you are your own worst critic. And so you're always going to look at that and be like, oh, this is trash. But somebody out there is probably going to be like, that's amazing. And sometimes, I feel like sometimes that kind of external input and so a lot of times that fans almost are like, they'll push you to drive and be better. So yeah, that's a big, I've always liked that bit of advice from a lot of different content creators is like, just put it out there. Like, it's okay. Like, there are going to be people out there who appreciate for what it is and to see the progression too. That's always cool.
And the other thing with that, I agree 100%. And the thing I think that people still like when they hear that and they don't listen to that advice is usually the thought is, I'm just gonna, okay, cool. I'm gonna play it safe. I'm gonna wait until I don't feel that way anymore before I take that advice. Something I discovered that I was shocked, but it makes so much sense now is like, even the most, who we would consider the most amazing artists and creators and animators or whoever they are, even those people still look at their work and go, oh, that's crap. Even though we're like, it's in the movie. It's the coolest shot in the movie. What do you mean it's crap? Like, yeah, I'm not really happy about this. And that never goes away, which is, you know, kind of a bummer from a creative standpoint. You'll always kind of feel inferior in some ways, but that's growth. Like that means you're getting better and you can see the flaws. And so don't wait until that feeling goes away because you'll never post anything ever.
Right.
Yeah, there's one guy I follow on Twitter that he makes like this most amazing art that he posts like constantly. He just makes stuff left and right. And he is the art director at a game studio owned by Google. And he always talks about how he hates his artwork. It's like he's made it to art director. So he's been doing this forever and he still doesn't like it. Like, I don't know. You just, that's the kind of the curse of the artist, I guess. Always going to hate your own stuff no matter what.
The struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe what you guys were just talking about kind of answers the same, maybe answers this in the same way. But like, I'm curious if you have any advice for say the people that like the freelancers and stuff who are currently like a lot of freelancers are struggling for work and all that, you know. So I'm curious if you have any advice for those people, or if it's the same thing of like just create and put it out there.
That's definitely a big part of it. I mean, not to be pluggy, but I do have a video on like 5 tips for freelance. Most of them are like contracts and stuff. Like if you're new to freelance, you should watch that video. But like especially with everything going on right now, I feel like things like animation, things that don't require involvement of other people in person, if you can learn some of those skills and apply them in an interesting way and then show people, like, there may be a client out there that doesn't know they need animation or doesn't think that that it fits. But if you can create something that shows, like, oh, this is what you could do, this is what I could make you, and this is how it's actually useful right now, like, you might show them, like, oh, actually we do want that. How much does that cost? Anime, I don't know. And then you kind of get into that thing of, like, on one hand, what on earth do you charge? And on the other hand, they don't know what you're supposed to charge for that. So, good luck.
Right.
It's a very abstract thing.
Yeah. Well, So I'm personally curious, but it also came up in chat. Over your left shoulder, it looks like a mashup of Calvin and Hobbes and How to Train Your Dragon.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that from Brian Kissinger? I follow somebody on Instagram personally, and they do mashups like that a lot.
I think I also follow him, but no, I think Peter something. He worked at DreamWorks. It was from DreamWorks used to do this art convention thing. It was kind of like DreamCon. I mean, it was called DreamCon. It was kind of like Comic-Con, where, like, people would bring all their, like, side projects and stuff, and then sell up prints and things.
Oh, okay. I noticed. I just noticed, and I thought that was really cute. And somebody had asked in the chat as well, and so I wanted to kind of get that out there.
For sure.
It's pretty cool.
I wish I could show all my background things. I have a whole shelf of, like, here, let me get my Shrek statue.
Shrek.
When you're at DreamWorks for 1 year, you get this.
Oh, cool.
DreamWorks 1 year statue. When you get 5 years, 5 years is Madagascar. It's Alex the Lion on a box with 5, and then Kung Fu Panda, it's 10, and he does this. So it's like 1-0. So they all have these poses of, like, the years.
Oh,
DreamWorks
that's
has only
so
existed
cool.
for like 23 years, so I think they just did a 20 or 25 year one for How to Train Your Dragon. So
Wow. Oh, that's super cool. I love that kind of a thing. Let's see. Anything else? Love what you guys do at Puget Systems. Aw, thanks.
oh, it's Nate. What's up, Nate? Oh, I see a lot of familiar names.
Yeah. I guess here's an interesting one. Are they rendering in real time these days? I would think not, right? Like,
For the movies, no. For games, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff. There's so much cool real-time stuff happening that the studios are exploring. In my experience, I know a lot of people are, like, at the studios, they're doing things that are doing real-time stuff, but the actual movies are not currently being done real-time. A lot of that's because they need compositing. They need to be able to kind of add stuff, change things, and make multiple versions of stuff. And like DreamWorks just built their own renderer. Back when I was leaving, they had just built a brand new ray tracing renderer because they were using this. I mean, fun fact about DreamWorks, every single animated movie in 3D up until Home in 2014, everything before that point was animated in a spreadsheet. And when you think, like, animated, like, how does that work?
Yeah.
I mean, literally one software to view your 3D scene, a different software that looks like Excel. It's got a list of, like, left brow middle, which is this, left brow outer, left brow inner, like a row per control, a column per frame, and you type a value, say mouth open 50, hit enter, wait, too much, 18. Every control in a spreadsheet for years
no way.
until they built their own proprietary animation tool, and their renderer was equally as bad, and so they built a new one.
Still, that's crazy to think it was that, I guess, manual. Like, it's not just like, oh, I can grab this little square and tweak it over here and then see the difference between the keyframes or something. It's like you're literally editing those values manually. That's insane.
Well, in
Wow.
Maya, there's a setting to save your whole file as ASCII characters. And so you can go in and open your entire file in text editor and go change stuff or whatever. Like, once you get into that high level of animation, they live on this other plane of existence where
Right?
Yeah,
I don't
I
even
don't know
see
how
the
they do it.
code.
Yeah.
Right?
I just feel like there's some guy that just he's doing everything at Pixar in text editor and Notepad.
It's just comma delimited
Yeah.
values. See, and it's that kind of thing. People don't realize that's how these movies were made. Like in my head, I had always pictured it was like almost like a digital claymation, where like you have a 3D model and you can tweak and move and adjust like a skeleton. And I've seen that in newer stuff, like with that rigging and things. But to hear that, nope, we moved each little individual like section, like that is just mind blowing.
It's crazy
Well,
because
and,
that
like-
was cutting edge. When they developed that software, that was a big deal. Everyone was like, "That's incredible that you can do that." Blah, blah, blah. And obviously, as soon as the posing stuff came around, they needed to upgrade that for a long time.
One like I think Toy Story, I had it in one of my presentations once, was the first animated movie that had during production had an undo feature. Like before then, if you did something, you couldn't undo. Like you just had to. I don't know how you would function without undo.
That's a world I don't want to live in.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And like that's not all that long ago, and that was after like Jurassic Park. So like
Right.
Jurassic Park was
Wow.
made without being able to undo an animation. Like that just seems terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Especially when you think of like the scope of that one scene, that very first scene with the brachiosaurs and all that stuff with the lake and everything, that's all digital. And so to think that they were just almost rolling the dice, like, okay, let's hope that this leg moves correctly, otherwise I have to
Yep.
go back and write that down and change
Yeah.
it back. And that's crazy. That's amazing. Just wow. People are like, yeah, man, I love having the undo feature.
Yeah.
Who would want to live without Control Z? That's crazy. Wow.
Half my life is Control Z. Same.
Right? Undo. Wow.
True story. Once in college, I was like, I need to get better at drawing. I like took a sketchbook out and I was drawing, and I like walked somewhere, was drawing some building, and I got like 40 minutes just into this drawing session. I'm like, I haven't saved. Wait.
Okay, sketchbooks have an autosave feature.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
back
nice. That's nice. That's pretty cool. Right on. Let's see. There was mention of the spreadsheet thing, the same as Presto. That's a new one to me. Isn't the spreadsheet thing the same as Presto?
Oh, so Presto is Pixar's proprietary animation software. And so no, the spreadsheet thing is basically, it's an old DreamWorks software called Emo. It stands for emotion, but my joke was always that it would make you emo because it makes you sad. No, so DreamWorks then developed Primo, which stands for premonition. It was so they could use the resources of their crazy computers and all the power to basically cache everything in real time, so you are always getting 24 FPS. And so that was their premonition feature. That's the new tool DreamWorks is using now, and it's like amazing. And then Presto is similar to that. It's what Pixar uses. And both softwares have an element of the spreadsheet stuff where you have like your timeline and the values and the graphs, so you can still edit things in that way. And so there is that similarity, but it's a much more intuitive and user-friendly experience all around.
Ah, that's nice.
Because like Kelly said, that data still exists as text. You could still mess with it if you wanted to, but I don't know who would want to.
Right? Whoa. Quality of life improvements are a good thing.
Yes.
Well, let's see. It looks like we're right about at our hour. So, is there anything else you'd like to mention, or any other questions from you guys, Eric or Kelly? Anything?
This is your opportunity to shamelessly plug yourself right here.
Yeah.
Well, sure. First of all, thank you everyone for coming, and thanks to you guys at Puget for having me. This is
Well,
fun.
thanks
I
for
love these
stopping
things.
by. This was great.
And I guess for anybody else, if you have other questions that like you were hoping I'd answer, or I don't know, anything that comes up later, I think I'm live. What's today? Wednesday. I'm live tomorrow on Twitch. I'm live 3 days a week on Twitch: Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then I'm on YouTube. That's my main thing. I also have a Discord server. Basically, all my stuff is all linked. If you find me on like my Instagram bio, like everything is all connected. If you go to a YouTube video, all the links are there. Go to Twitch, they're all there. But the Discord server is a really good resource if anyone's getting into this kind of stuff, or you have tech questions, or you have questions about anything really. But we have a Discord server with a bunch of artists who are there answering questions. So if I'm not available, there's 3,000 other people there to help troubleshoot stuff or talk about stuff or give you feedback on your work if you're trying to work on a demo reel or things like that.
All right. So
I might have to invade that to ask questions on to my benchmarks.
You'll get a lot of varied answers, I'm sure. We have a lot of softwares in there.
Like, how do I break this computer the most?
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because there was somebody who was having trouble with their demo reel and wanted to know the best way to send it to you to receive criticism. So I suppose Discord might be the best place. That way, if not you, someone else might be able to help them.
Yes, because I do have I do animation tutoring, and that's the only way that because I get so many people asking me to look at their demo reel. So the way I do it is through Patreon to help support the content. I do animation tutoring and critiques and reviews. But if it's not me you need, or if you don't have a budget for that, no worries. Discord is there for that exact reason, so that you have a place to go and get your critique if you don't have that network on your own.
That's
Cool.
awesome. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you. Right on. And so and I spammed your main webpage in the chats too. So I imagine everybody can find the appropriate places to go from there. And so right on. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us today. I'm sorry I was a little unplugged from some of that, trying to fix the technical issues. But thank you to my coworkers and compatriots for helping keeping things going. And that is so cool. I need to get that. Well, yeah. Again,
I
thank
can
you.
expect that request in the next week, Houston.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a little soundboard. But yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, and thank you again to the audience as well. We do this every Wednesday for industry expert Q&A. We call it Workflow Wednesdays, and then Fridays we have our labs team come on for just again kind of QA stuff. We'll get a little bit of insight into what they do, and kind of just advice and help in that sense as well. Both days, Wednesdays and Fridays, start at 1 p.m. on all of our various channels: YouTube, Twitch. I think it's also going out on Periscope and our Facebook as well. So thanks, everybody. And we'll see you all on Friday.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
And